All right, so we're going to talk about format teaching. We're going to be primarily talking about drill lessons. However, I will introduce a little bit of lecture and a little bit of dorm as well. For our drill lessons, we're going to follow a format. Our format is PAMOOT or PAMOOT. And all of these different letters stand for things that you need to put inside your lesson. We always start a class with our prelims. That's what you see is the big P up here, prelims. And in our prelims, we have to state our name. Good afternoon, my name is Master Sergeant Carmody. I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. We move from there after prelims, and in a drill lesson, we are required to talk about waivers as well. Those are our two requirements in our drill lessons that we must hit in the prelims. For instance, good afternoon, my name is Master Sergeant Carmody. I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. By a show of hands, is there anyone out there on any type of waiver that's going to prevent you from attending this next lesson? Those are the requirements. Now, when we introduce lecture and dorm, we also have to talk about evac procedures as well. For that reason, when I personally am teaching any lesson, I always throw evac procedures in there as well. That way, I'm covered no matter what class I'm teaching. I always do it the exact same way, and I never get lost in my lesson, and I never miss anything. So now it's going to be, good afternoon, my name is Master Sergeant Carmody. I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. By a show of hands, is there anyone out there on any type of waiver that is going to prevent you from attending this lesson? Outstanding, there's no waivers. In case of an emergency trainees, we are going to file off of the drill pad in a single file line, and we are going to go back to the overhang where I will size you up and take accountability. Once again, for a drill lesson, I'm only required to hit these two right here. So if I didn't say that in a drill lesson, my evaluator is not going to give me an NI or a needs improvement area on my prelim portion of my lesson. Also, during the course of a lesson, and we'll talk about all these things here in the future, but there's other things that we have to talk about in the course of a lesson. Some of those things that we have to talk about would be risk management or safety. Another thing that we're going to have to talk about is core values. We're also going to have to personalize our lesson. And we're also going to have to ask questions during the course of our lesson. There's 3 different questioning techniques that y'all will go over in MTIS. Those 3 different questioning techniques that we are required to bring up is going to be direct questions, overhead questions, and rhetorical questions. There's also 2 other questioning types that you're going to cover in MTIS as well. But those questioning types, they're not required for the instructor to bring those questioning types into the equation. The other 2 questioning types are going to be relay questions and reverse questions. I say we're not required to introduce those because we can't. A relay question or a reverse question, the trainee has to introduce that. If the trainee asks us a question, that gives us the opportunity to relay or reverse the question. But we, in the course of our lesson, we have to add these questioning types into our lesson. Because I know in my prelims that I'm going to hit all this stuff right here, when I'm talking about either waivers or evac, it's a prime opportunity just from the very get-go, the start of my lesson, for me to throw in some safety. If I'm talking about evac procedures and I say, in the event of an emergency, we're going to file out of our location right now, back underneath the overhang, where we're going to size it up and take accountability. Let's keep in mind while doing so that I don't want you to run, I don't want you to talk, I want you to get there safely in a single file line. That way, none of us are injured. You can say something along those lines to introduce safety that early on in my lesson. Now let's talk about how this sounds one more time, just so we all have it. Good morning, my name is Master Sergeant Carmody. I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. By a show of hands, is there anyone out there on any type of waiver that is going to prevent you from attending this lesson? There's no waivers. Outstanding. In case of an emergency, we're going to file off this drill pad in a single file line back up underneath the overhang where I will size you up and take accountability. Keep in mind while doing so that I don't want any pushing, any running, any talking. I simply want us to go in a single file line, and when we get there, I'll give you instructions on what to do. And then we move from there into our attention step. That's what the A stands for, attention step. You're going to hear in MTIS talking about known to unknown, how to bring them from the known to unknown, and I'm going to cover it as well. But the purpose of an attention step is simply to get people's attention. That's all it is. So if we're talking about right face, there's all sorts of different attention steps I've heard over the years. We're standing at the mall, you see something that you like, and what do? You turn 90 degrees to the right. Well, that's the exact same as a drill movement that we have here in the Air Force, where I'm going to call a command and you're going to turn 90 degrees to the right. That could be an attention step. There's multiple other things. Somebody calls your name and you turn 90 degrees to the right. Well, the same thing, I'm going to call a command and you're going to turn 90 degrees to the right. I like to keep it simple. I don't like to get elaborate with my attention steps at all. What I usually say for my attention step is something as simple as, hey trainees, up until this point in training, if I needed you to turn 90 degrees to the right, I simply told you to turn 90 degrees to the right. But now I'm going to teach you how to do that same movement with more precision and snap. Now I mentioned known to unknown. No. So what am I talking about with known to unknown? For the known, out of those attention steps that we just talked about there, trainees, how many of you found yourself at a mall and you saw something that you liked and so you turned 90 degrees to the right? That's something that everybody knows. What they don't know is the second part I added to that. Well, trainees, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to do that militarily with more precision and snap. So when I'm talking about an attention step and taking somebody from the known to the unknown, I'm introducing information that they've known in the past. For instance, trainees, if I wanted you to turn 90 degrees to the right, I simply told you to turn 90 degrees to the right. Okay, I got that. You told me that in the past. What they don't know is that I'm about to teach them how to do it with more precision and snap. So when you hear people talking about known to unknown, that's what they're relating to. Another example of an attention step. Trainees, how many of you play video games? Outstanding. Lots of you play video games. If you want to turn your character 90 degrees to the right, what do? Sir, trainee so-and-so reports is ordered. I push right on the directional pad and my character turns 90 degrees to the right. You're exactly right, trainee. In the same way as you pushing that directional pad and making your character turn 90 degrees to the right, I'm going to now teach you how to turn 90 degrees to the right when I call a command. So in that scenario, I'm getting known to unknown. And so you're going to hear a lot of instructors talking about going from known to unknown, but understand that the only requirement is for you to grasp their attention. That's it. Whatever you need to do to grasp their attention in your attention step. Next, we move down to our M. Our M in our format teaching is talking about motivation. We need to motivate our trainees to be able to want to do the drill movement. A lot of things that I see young instructors struggle with when they're thinking about teaching by the format is just simply how to get from this down to here, or from here down to there. What are the simple phrases that I'm saying that get me from point A to point B? We know in our lesson that we have to ask different types of questions. It is not required that you do this. It is not required. However, a simple way to go from your attention step down to your motivation step is by throwing in one of our questioning techniques, a rhetorical question. I'm required to do it in my lesson anyways. The evaluators are listening for it. So it's good to throw my rhetorical question into my phrase that I use to put me into my motivation step. How does that sound? Trainees, why is this important? Bam, there's a rhetorical question right there. Why is this important? Why is it important that we learn how to perform a right face? Well, the importance is X, Y, and Z. How do we deliver our motivation steps? You can do whatever to motivate your trainees. There's really no requirements on how you motivate your trainees, but you do need to be personally motivated yourself when delivering the information. And once again, I like to keep things simple. And it doesn't matter what class I teach, I always try to say the exact same stuff in my motivation steps. That way I never forget it. It's always there. For instance, what I talk about in my motivation steps is I will talk about the Air Force core values. I will talk about, is it a graduation requirement? Let me erase this. I will talk about whether it's a graduation requirement or not. I will introduce Air Force core values because I'm required to. I will also talk about how it's going to help them in BMT and how it's going to prepare them for the operational Air Force. How does this sound right here? Trainees, why is learning right face important? Well, right face is a graduation requirement, meaning you're going to be evaluated on this for a progress check in the later weeks of training. But even more so than that, when you apply the fundamentals of discipline that you learn in this drill movement with your 3 Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do, that's going to set you up for success in all other phases of basic military training. But even more so than that, it's going to prepare you for a lifetime of success in the operational Air Force. You don't have to say the things that I say. I will say this, there's nothing that I will say that is copyrighted. So if you want to copy my exact phrasing that I want to use there, and you want to say that exact same motivational step for every single other lesson that you have that is a graduation requirement, you're more than welcome to do so. Because it's always going to follow, it's always going to fit in there, it's always going to be good. You will always get a good rating on that motivation step right there if you do that. But you can talk about whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. But what I would highly encourage every single one of you to do is to have 3 or 4 things that you will talk about in your motivation step. Don't just give me one. Hey trainees, well, it's a graduation requirement. Well, you know what? That's not very motivating to a room full of people just telling me that it's a graduation requirement. Give me 3 or 4 things that you want to talk about. It could be mine, it could be yours, however you want to do it. Once again, nothing I say is copyrighted, so you can do the exact same thing. There's no reason to make this up for every individualized class that you're going to teach. You could simply do pretty much the exact same thing for every lesson. Well, what if it's not a graduation requirement? I can't say the same thing. Well, I basically could say the same thing. I could say, trainees, why is this important? Well, even though this isn't necessarily a graduation requirement, the fundamentals of attention to detail that you learn while performing this in accordance with your 3 Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do are going to set you up for success in all other phases of basic military training, to include your graduation requirements, and set you up for a lifetime of success in the operational Air Force. So I don't have to flip things up. I guarantee you that any instructor that's out in BMT, the majority of instructors out in BMT, if Stanoval or their supervisor was going to hit them up for the class and they gave them an hour notice, the majority of instructors would they would spend the majority of their time preparing for that lesson, figuring out what they're going to say for their attention step and their motivation step. If I know what I'm going to say for all of these right here in my lesson, if I say the same thing every time for both my attention step and my motivation step, I'm pretty much going to be solid. I'm going to have that hour long that I have to prepare to work on the verbiage of the lesson plan. And that's what I really want. I don't want to spend my time worried about what I'm going to say for my attention step or worried about what I'm going to say for my motivation step. Let's cover what we went over so far. So we've talked about prelims, attention step, and motivation, but how does it all flow together? Let's listen to it all when it flows together. Good morning. My name is Master Sergeant Carmen. I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. By a show of hands, is there anyone out there on any type of waiver that's going to prevent you from attending this next lesson? Great, no waivers. In case of an emergency, we are going to file off of this drill pad in a single file manner. We're going to get where we need to go. Keep in mind while we're doing so that we're not going to run, we're not going to push, we're not going to shove, we're not going to talk. We're simply going to get there in a single file manner. That way we can all remain safe while we're doing so. Trainees, I want you to think back to a video game that I used to play as a kid. How many of you, by show of hands, remember Mario? Mario is pretty cool because if I wanted to turn Mario 90 degrees to the right, I simply press on the directional pad and Mario turned 90 degrees to the right. Now that I'm a military training instructor and I think about that simple movement for Mario, it makes me think about a drill movement called right face, where I now call a command and I get to move you, just like Mario, 90 degrees to the right. I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Why is it important that you learn this, trainees? It's important because this is a graduation requirement, meaning you're going to be evaluated on this in the later weeks of training. And when you learn to apply this drill movement utilizing your 3 Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do, and you couple that with your fundamentals of discipline, it's going to set you up for a lifetime of success, or for success in all other core tasks in your base military training, and it's going to prepare you for a lifetime of success in the operational Air Force. That so far is where we're at. That's how we flow from here all the way down to our motivation step. Another thing that you're not required to do is have some transition that goes from here to there, but a lot of instructors, brand new instructors, struggle with, well, how do I go from my motivation step to my O? What is our O? It's our overview. And in our overview, there's things that we have to say. We have to talk about the main points of the lesson. No, I'm sorry, we have to state the name of our lesson first. And we have to talk about the main points of our lesson. So how do we get there? How do we go for it's going to prepare you for a lifetime of success in the operational Air Force? To get into our overview right here. For our overview, I simply say a little phrase like, so today I will teach you. So today I will teach you how to perform a right face. I have to say it's required for me to say the name of my lesson in my overview. In doing so, I'm going to show you what the drill movement looks like. I'm going to teach you the requirements in order for you to perform the drill movements. I'm going to break the drill movement down in slow motion so that you understand every aspect of what your body does at any given point in time throughout the drill movement. After that, I'm going to provide you the opportunity to ask me questions. Then we're going to go over what's called by the numbers and coach pupil. And finally, you're going to have the opportunity to apply. How did I get those main points of the lesson? Once you get your lesson plans, or as you're looking at your lesson plans right now, if you look, it tells in your lesson, you'll see the first thing is going to be the whole impression. And it's going to give you, you see that right here, ma'am? So you got your whole impression. And then the next thing after whole impression was what? Requirements. And then after requirements, you went into expo demo or instruction. It says instruction. It's called expo demo. And then after that, it tells you that you're going to go into by the numbers. Then you'll provide a second whole impression, and then you'll perform, and then you'll do coach pupil. So that's where I'm getting the main points. I'm following what my lesson plans, whatever the big bold stuff is in your lesson plans. That's what my main points are for the lesson. Once again, so today I will teach you how to perform a right face. Got to say the name of my lesson. In doing so, I'm going to show you what the drill movement looks like when it's performed at full speed. I'm going to teach you the requirements that you need to know in order to perform the drill movements. I'm going to show you how to perform the drill movement basically in slow motion so that every one of you understands what my body is doing at any given point in time throughout the drill movement. I'm then going to cover by the numbers and a second whole impression, and finally I'm going to teach you coach pupil, and then you're going to have the opportunity to apply. Now I go into my second O. How do I get to my second O? What is our second O? Our second O is our objective. Finally, I'm going to break the drill movement down. Well, I'll have the opportunity to apply. This is all to meet our objective of. And from here, I state the objective as it's listed in our lesson plan. The objective for this class, the particular one that we're talking about, right face, is without reference, perform individual drill movements on command with no more than 2 instructor assists per movement. So I would state that lesson from the lesson plan right here. Once again, today I will teach you how to perform a right face. In doing so, I will cover all the main points. This is all to meet our objective of, without reference, perform individual drill movements on command with no more than 2 instructor assists per movement. All right, got some heads nodding, so I understand we see our objective right there. And that's where I have to state that. From here, we move down into transitioning into a whole impression. For drill lessons, you're always gonna have a whole impression. For lecture or for dorm lessons, you'll have a whole impression as well that you'll transition down into. Lecture is the only one that you won't have a whole impression you're transitioning into, but you still have to transition into the first line of verbiage for that lesson. So how could I use my transition? What could I use to transition into my whole impression? There's all sorts of different, a lot of instructors, when they teach, they'll use whatever they said in their attention step and basically create a story that flows with all their transitions into their main points of their lesson. For instance, earlier you heard me talk about Mario Brothers. I said, Mario, I turn him 90 degrees to the right. So if I wanted to keep with that same flow as I transition, I could say something along the lines of, and I was going into my whole impression. The whole impression is where we're about to show them at full speed what the drill movement looks like. So if I wanted to use that to transition, I could say something along the lines of, trainees, someone raise your hand and tell me, if you don't know how to play a game, what do most video games provide that allows you to see what you're going to be doing first? Sir, train, so and so forth, order. They're going to give you a, what's the thing called where they show you what it is? I just had the word on my tip of my tongue. There's basically a something that you can follow along with, like a tutorial. That's what I'm trying to think of. Most trainees, most of the time we have, you could follow a tutorial which will show you how to play whatever game you're trying to play. Well, in keeping with that same fashion, I am going to provide you a tutorial on how to perform this drill movements. If I wanted to keep my transition simple and I didn't want to get into all that, I could simply say something along the lines of, trainees, I can't expect you to be able to perform this drill movement unless I first show you how to do it first show you how to do it. And when we're learning to teach by the format, I would highly encourage all of you, don't try to get fancy with your lessons. Keep things simple. Don't try to add stuff that if you're not comfortable talking about being at the mall and turning 90 degrees to the right, then don't talk about it. Over the years, I've done all sorts of different attention steps, helicopters that hover, at the mall, and there's really just not a whole lot of stuff that entertains me. I don't like talking about any of that stuff, and I feel like an idiot for the most part when I do talk about it. And so over the years, I've just gotten away from it. I've talked about video games a lot. I used to talk about Mario for pretty much all my drill lessons, but I don't even play video games, and so it wasn't something that interested me. And so what I've reverted to over the years is, hey, when I wanted you to turn 90 degrees to the right, I simply told you to turn 90 degrees to the right. And then when I got down here to my transition, trainees, I can't expect you to do this unless I first show you how to do this. Just keep it simple. There's no reason to get crazy with these things. Plus, we're under a time limit in our lesson too. So the longer or the more in depth you go transitioning through these things, it's gonna be hard. So I like to keep it simple. Trainees, I'll keep it something simple. I can't expect you to know how to do this unless I first show you how to do this. So that's how we start a lesson. If you're following along in the videos that we have posted, every single video starts from this point right here. Usually I start with a transition and then move down throughout the lesson. This is how we would actually start off a lesson right here. Once you do this, then you can do what I've shown you in the videos. How does this all sound when we put it all together? Good morning, my name is Master Sergeant Carmody, and I'm going to be your instructor for this next block of instruction. By a show of hands, is there anyone out here that's on any type of waiver that's going to prevent you from attending this drill lesson? Outstanding, there's no waivers. In case of an emergency, we're going to file out of our location right here. We're going to go back to the overhang where I will size you up and take accountability. Keep in mind, as we're doing so, that I don't want any pushing, I don't want any running, I don't want any shoving, I don't want any talking. I simply want us to go there in a single file line and get there safely. Trainees, up until this point, if I've wanted you to turn 90 degrees to the right, I simply told you turn 90 degrees to the right. But now I'm going to teach you how to do so in a more professional manner with some precision, with some snaps where it looks like that we're in the military. Why is it important that we learn how to turn 90 degrees to the right like this? Well, I'll tell you, this is a graduation requirement, trainees. You're going to be evaluated on this in the later weeks of training for a progress check. Even more so than that, when you apply this drill movement according to your fundamentals of discipline that you're learning and your 3 Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do, it's going to set you up for success in all other phases of basic military training. Even more so than that, when you prepare with those fundamentals of discipline and those 3 Air Force core values in all tasks that you do, it's going to set you up for success for a lifetime in the Operational Air Force. So today, trainees, I'm going to teach you how to perform a right face. In doing so, I'm going to show you how to perform the drill movement at full speed. After that, I'm going to teach you the requirements that you must meet before you can even perform the drill movements. Then I'm going to break the drill movement down for you slow motion. That way, every single one of you can understand every aspect of what my body is doing at any given point in time throughout the drill movements. After that, I'm going to teach you by the numbers and coach pupil. And finally, we're going to have the opportunity to apply this drill movements. This is all to meet our objective of, without reference, perform individual drill movements on command with no more than 2 instructor assists per movements. Trainees, I can't expect you to be able to perform this drill movement unless I first show you how to perform this drill movement.